Hi, this is PD at BurgZerg Arcade at BurgZergArcade.com, and this is tutorial 251 of our little hack and slash prototype. Let's go ahead and just jump right in. I believe last we left off, we were just creating our finite state machine, or at least upgrading the AI. And if we take a look here, yes, we had just set up the decision loop, and we wanted to make sure that the mob can move every time, every frame. So every decision, it moves and then chooses what type of attack it does. And that's where we left off. I just want to make sure down here, yes, we are setting the state back to search. So after it's done an attack, it automatically goes back into search mode. I'm just going to put a bit more spacing here. I generally like 2 to 3 lines in between each function. Okay, so anyway, so we're going to go through and let's just start off with melee combat. Now, melee combat, as we stated in the last video, we only want to go off if he's actually within melee range. Now, if he's not within melee range, we don't even want this to become an option for our guy to do. And it is kind of easy, like just to leave it in there and just check, like if it did return a 0, re-roll basically. But, what if it rolled like 3 zeros in a row type thing? You're kind of wasting time and whatnot. We could just replace this with one check, and we'll just do some sort of base melee range. I'm not sure if we actually have one set up yet. I don't believe we do, not as a constant anyway in our game settings, so we'll want to set one of those up. And we'll just check that. If he's not within that range, then we'll only pick between 1 and 2 instead of 0 to 2. So let me go ahead. I know we do have it in one of our scripts. Let me see. It's probably in one of our player scripts. Well, we're going to need game settings too. Let me just check here. There's the melee weapon, melee path. All right, so we do not have base melee range. So let's check in some of our player scripts. This would have been handy to have my notes for, but anyway, let me see, what do we have? Probably under character. Wouldn't be under, well, maybe base character. Nope. Do we put it under player? I don't think so. Well, we may not actually have a variable for it. I thought I did. Okay, well, apparently I don't, because those would probably be the most logical places that I would have put it. And since I don't have one, I'm just going to go ahead and create one. And I'm going to put it in the game settings too. It's going to be public constants. I'm just deciding where. Now, these all have to do with paths. So I'm going to put it above there, right underneath version. And like I said, it'll be a public constant. We're going to make it a float. And we're going to call it base melee range. Now this is the minimum. I don't think I really need the minimum in there. I do want it to be a float, so I am going to put the F after it. And of course, don't forget your equal sign. Great, so now we can come back into, well, we don't need advanced movement. We're going to come back into the AI script. And I'm going to be changing this line here a bit. So what I'm going to do is say int op. And I'm just going to start off being equal to 0. I just like to initiate all my variables when I first start. And then I'm going to say if. And we'll want to get his base, his transform position. I just want to make sure I'm caching the transform up here, which I am as my transform. So we'll say my transform dot position. Actually, I'm sorry. We actually want to check the distance. So we're going to say vector 3 dot distance. And if we look here, it actually tells you how to use this function. It returns a float, and it takes 2 vector 3s, And I'm just going to put our vector 3 in first. Now these vector 3 are positions. So we're going to use my transform dot position. And for the second, we're going to use our target. And I'm not sure if we have that set up yet. Let me see here. We do have a target. Great. So we're just going to say underscore target dot transform dot position. Now I may not actually need that transform. Let me just see how we're setting the target up here. Was he a game object or is he a transform? He's actually, whoops, that's us. He's actually a transform, so we don't actually need that transform here. And I do have a mistake. Oh, the line's not, itself is not done. So basically we're going to say if it's less than game settings 2 dot base melee range, then we want to do something. So if it's less than base melee range, we're actually just going to do this, except we no longer need to initialize it. So we're calling this one, he can do melee ranged and magic attacks. And basically, if he's not less than that, that means he can't do melee. So we're just going to use an else. And we'll take this here. And you could fudge around with this. You could move your melee to the end and just decrease this by 1, so it'd be 0 to 2. But since it is at one of the ends, you just want to move that end up a bit. So basically, we're just going to say he has the option of 1 or 2. So just to reiterate, either have your melee as class 0 or class 2. I like leaving it at class 0 because it's just really easy to change that as I add more options here. If you do have more, I don't think I'll have more different attacks than these 3 basic ones, but if I do decide to add them, it's going to be easy to change. And to be honest, when there's only one line, I generally don't like to use parentheses. I just think it gives a bit cleaner look of code. But anyway, that should work. Let's see, I just want to quickly go through. So let's see if we save that off and go back into game. Make sure there's no errors. There are none. And I'm getting a few warnings about my train toolkit, which is fine because I'm not worried about that. I'm going to go ahead and jump through the portal. And let's clear this here. I'm actually going to watch the finite state machine. And I'm going to try to stay away from him. And we should never get a melee option. Of course, I really should put a debug in there to show that it's not an option. So yeah, they're all 1 and 2s. And now if I let them get close enough, there should be some zeros showing up. Or not. All right, let's change the debugging a bit so I can see exactly what's going on. We'll put these parentheses back in, and we're going to put debug statements in. And I'm actually going to use these as warnings so they show up as yellow. Just a little easier for me to see. So I'm going to say in melee range. And the else. I'm just going to copy this one and say not in melee range. And we'll just save that off. We'll head back into our game. Start it back up. I'm just going to clear it. And we'll go ahead. Should move them closer. Not in melee range, not in melee range. So there we go. And what's it say? It's still saying not in melee range. So in melee range. So he's stopping outside of melee range. So we do actually have that variable stored somewhere, and we're gonna have to change that. So let's pause this And I'm assuming it's under the move. So let's go find that. It's right down here. And we're checking the distance. Base melee range. We're going to be changing this now to it was game settings 2 dot base melee range. And since that was a local variable, that means it's up here at the top. So I'm just going to come up to the top. I'll shrink some of this down. I'm actually going to see if I can find this anywhere else in my script. I can right here. And it looks like it's in 2 different spots. So one at the top, one of the down lower. So okay, we'll have to change it 1 spot then. So that's pretty good. So we'll say game settings 2 dot base melee range. Clean this up a little bit. Now there's only 1 left. Now we should be able to get rid of this. Now I was using 3.5 up there. So I'm actually going to come back into game settings since I seem to think that 3.5 was good. And I'm just going to change it here now. Now, my player, when you're creating your player, you're going to want your base melee range here as well. And since we are here, I'm going to create the other ones based base range. If I can spell range. So this will be well, this is actually going to be a little bit different because now when you start dealing with ranged, well, this is going to be the maximum. So I'm not really sure. I haven't tested anything with it yet. So I'm just going to say 10. And for magic, I don't want it to be quite as far. So I'm just going to say 7.5. And of course, you can have modifiers that affect all this here, but I just want to get them all set up just for now, and we'll do a quick comment. Base ranges for different attacks. And we should be able to come in here again. We got rid of that. One thing I did want to point out about our little decision states that we're going through is ideally I'd probably want to set up another enumeration for them. I don't think I'm actually going to have more than 3 here. So I'm probably going to leave it like this, but later on for efficiency's sake, I'll probably create an enumeration. And I remember when I was first starting to learn C#, I was reading up a lot of stuff on C#. One of the things that I did read was that your switch case blocks are much more efficient than doing if, and else blocks. As far as the way it's handled, I guess with the compiler, the way it creates the jump statements. So I tend to use my switch statements a lot more in C# than my if statements. Of course, you know, like there's exceptions, but generally if I have more than 2 options, you'll almost always see me use a switch. But let's go ahead, we'll save that off. We're going to go back in. I'll start this back up. We'll clear it right away. We'll jump through the portal. Run back up. And now it's using the same distance for both spots. It should work. So of course we just keep looking at the yellow one here, not melee. Then once he's in melee, we see that zeros do appear. And not melee, so I did manage to get away. 0 stop appearing. Great, so in this one here, we actually managed to get it to omit the ability to melee attack when he's not in range. Thanks for watching. And if you actually do like these tutorials, could you go ahead and give me a click on the thumbs up if you actually like this video, or even thumbs down if you didn't. It actually really does help me, not just so much on the YouTube partnership side of things, but just to let me know, do people actually watch these videos anymore? Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.